As I sit and remember the chilling incidents of one particular summer, my heart pounds like the echoing drum beats in a ritual dance. That summer, the line between reality and the supernatural blurred into an inextricable mix, causing sheer terror that still haunts me. And it all began with a cornfield. My grandparents owned sprawling acres of rural lushness in Nebraska, the heart of which was a vast cornfield. Corn stalks stood tall, like green sentinels guarding secrets of the earth, their leaves rustling like whispered secrets. As kids, we loved playing in this cornfield, building mazes and forts. But that summer, when I turned 15, everything changed. Are you familiar with how silence wraps around you on a hot summer afternoon? Imagine that silence broken by a feeble scratching sound. This scratching noise, seemingly originating from the cornfield, was the first anomaly I noticed. The sound was persistent, not quite locusts and not the wind either. It was as if 1,000 tiny claws were scraping against the earth, desperately trying to get out, or perhaps get in. One balmy afternoon, curiosity got the better of me. I followed the scratching sound into the cornfield, the noise growing louder with each step. As I reached the heart of the cornfield, the scratching abruptly ceased, and I found myself standing before a large, unmarked, oval area where the corn had been leveled flat to the ground. It was as if a giant rock had rested there, or perhaps fallen from the sky. A shiver ran down my spine despite the hot summer sun high above me. That night, I lay awake in bed, haunted by what I had seen. It was eerily quiet, too quiet. Suddenly, the serenity was ripped apart by a high-pitched, metallic screech echoing from the cornfield. My heart pounded in my chest as I leapt off the bed and ran outside. The night sky was lit up by a green glow, emanating from the cornfield. The far-off shape of my grandfather, silhouetted against the eerie light, was hurriedly moving towards the glow. Summoning every ounce of courage, I followed him. As we approached the glow, I saw it. Sprawled on the flattened corn was a strange machine, resembling a gargantuan insect more than anything human-made, its body still steaming from its hot descent from the heavens. I could hear it humming, the sound pulsating through the air. Fear knotted in my stomach as I realized we were not alone. In the following days, things started to change. The livestock began behaving strangely. Cattle refused to graze. Chickens were too scared to cluck. Our dog, Old Biscuit, was too terrified to leave his kennel. Then the crops started to wilt. The cornfield that was once lush and green was now slowly turning into a lifeless sepia wasteland. Even more terrifying was the nightly apparition. We began seeing figures moving in the green glow within the cornfield. They were tall and walked with an awkward gait, far from any human stride. Dread gnawed at me with each passing day. Then, one chilling dawn, Grandfather went missing. He left a note saying he was drawn towards the thing in the cornfield. He left instructions not to follow him. But how could we not? My father formed a search party, and we delved into the cornfield, following the now familiar strange light. The sight that greeted us was beyond comprehension. Our grandfather was there, standing amidst the once flattened corn, now grown to an unnatural height, faster than any crop. He seemed mesmerized, his arms outstretched towards the strange insect-like machine. The tall figures emerged, circling him, their odd, distorted forms moving rhythmically, as if they were in a trance. No one dared to move as one of the figures stepped forward and touched Grandfather. It was quiet, with all eyes fixed on the strange communion in the heart of the cornfield. Then, as abruptly as it had begun, it ended. The figures retreated, disappearing into the strange machine as the green glow pulsated for a second before disappearing entirely. We found my grandfather where he stood, but he was not the same. He'd aged years within that moment. His hair turned entirely white, intensity forever etched in his eyes. He never spoke of what happened that day and lived the rest of his life in silenced wonderment. Endless questions remained. Whispers about the terror in the cornfield circulated, but no answers surfaced. The authorities dismissed our experiences as collective hysteria, but we knew the truth. Every rustling corn leaf and every star in the night sky served as a nerve-wracking reminder of the thin line that separates us from the vast unknown. And so, with countless questions and the eerie memory of those harrowingly unforgettable days, I remember the cornfield. It stands today green and swaying as before, whispering the events of that summer into the wind. I can only look at it, my skin prickling with an unnameable fear and a cold fascination. After all, who would believe a cornfield could harbor such terrors? But we know it did, and perhaps it still does. If you arrived here and did not press the like button, then what are you waiting for? My beautiful friend, you will not be missing anything, thank you. Once upon a time, I lived in the heartland of the United States, where towering silver silos nestle against the backdrop of seemingly endless fields of wheat, soybeans, and corn. This heartland, Nebraska, is my home, an isolated homestead tucked between the sprawling cornfields. It's there that I experienced an unforgettable horror that turned my world upside down. This story happened when I was 17. It was the summer before my senior year of high school, a time where I mustered the confidence to explore solitary places and sought adventures to remember in the twilight of my youth. It's a cornfield, with its labyrinthine trails carved between the endless stomping of giants, was my chosen realm. The corn stood tall, reaching out to the powder blue sky. Walking between them was like walking between cathedrals of nature. The rustling whispers of the cornstalks in the late afternoon breeze were the only sounds breaking the endless, expansive silence. One day, while wandering idly through my somber, endless green haven, I stumbled across an oddity deep within the field. A circle of flattened cornstalks, symmetrical and smooth as if pressed by an enormous unseen hand. The oddity stirred an uncanny feeling, but I shook it off, attributing this bizarre phenomenon to strong winds or playful animals. Oh, how naive I was. Soon after this discovery, the tranquility of our homestead was shattered. The animals began to act oddly. My faithful dog, Max, twitched in his sleep and whelped in fear. The cows rejected their feed, and an eerie silence replaced the customary morning song of the birds. Nightfall began to bring with it a strange, ominous glow from deep within the cornfield. Its chilling luminescence seared in my memory. Bewildered and increasingly terrified, I mustered the courage one night to investigate the source of this odd glow. As I ventured further into the cornfield, the ghostly glow intensified, and an unnatural humming sound resonated in the still of the night. Suddenly, a gut-wrenching sight awaited me. In the middle of the flattened circle was a bizarre, alien device, emitting an almost surreal, otherworldly hue that played eerie tricks on the shadows around it. It hummed and echoed, vibrating with an energy that was both terrifying and awe-inspiring. I rushed back home, breathless and shaking with fear. But the terror had just begun. Each day brought with it escalating oddities. Flickering lights, rattling windows, and specter-like shadows darting through the cornfields. The peaceful rural life I once loved had morphed into ghastly existence as we tread on the uncertain line between dread and sanity. Then came the night I'd never forget. It started with Max's unprecedented howling. As I stepped outside to calm him down, I saw something that froze me in fear. Tall, spectral beings with an uneven, broken gait were dancing around the alien object deep within the cornfields. Their horrific, high-pitched voices echoed in the night as they moved rhythmically and awe-inspiring. Ethereal choreography that should have been beautiful, but instead incited raw terror in me. Afraid of the horror but propelled towards it out of necessity, I rounded my friends and dragged them into the horrific scene unfolding in our cornfield. We approached the circle silently, hiding to watch this terrifying spectacle. Then everything went silent. The beings looked towards the sky, and their bodies dissolved into a golden light that whisked towards the cosmos, leaving nothing behind but devastation. In the aftermath, our once lush, flourishing cornfield was dead, desolated as though God himself had abandoned it. Despite numerous investigations, no one could explain those horrifying nights. The official conclusion of collective hallucination might have satiated outsiders, but we knew better than to believe the sweet lie of ignorance. As years passed, and I ventured into adulthood, the horror slowly faded into dreaded memory, yet that disconcerted feeling of terror refuses to shake off. The cornfield's eerie echo is forever etched in my mind, the whispers of those alien beings lurking in each rustling leaf. The field, now subdued and unassuming, holds a chilling history of those spine-tingling summer nights that perfectly embodied the term true horror. I recount this tale now, not to instill fear, but remind myself and others that our world teems with mysteries that don't always have logical answers. These mysteries, once explored, is a horror in itself, and sometimes the terror they instill lingers like an echo, The horror of the cornfield is one such terrifying echo that reverberates with dread till this day. Keep in mind that endless cornfields, dominant landscapes in the Midwest, a vast area stretching from the prairies of Illinois to the flatlands of Nebraska that is largely regarded as the country's breadbasket. I hail from Nebraska, and for generations, my family has lived on an isolated farm running along a cloud-like river. Our property featured a sprawling 500-acre field of corn, reaching as far as the eye could see. Notably, to the west, our land bordered the ominous and seemingly impenetrable wilderness of the Gloomwood Forest. During childhood, the cornfield was a realm of endless exploration and wonder. However, around 15, when adolescent curiosity and audacious bravery begin to intertwine, the cornfield transmuted from a sanctuary of wonder to a purveyor of unimaginable horrors. The changes began subtly during the summer before my sophomore year of high school. An impish drought had settled over the region, and after several weeks of relentless sun, the corn began to wither, curl, and brown. Amid this arid nightmare, however, I noticed an anomaly. A flourishing, verdant green patch of corn in the middle of the parched, dying field. Every day, this patch seemed to expand, growing taller and greener than the rest of the stalks, and transforming into a distinctively circular pattern. Curiosity finally won, and I decided to explore this green nexus in the otherwise desolate field. The adventure began like any other. Stalks brushing against my arms in a familiar rustling rhythm. I often found solace in this sound. It was comforting, a whispering lullaby from nature. However, as I neared the green patch, the rustling sound grew louder, morphing from a whisper into an urgent, frenzied chatter. Entering the circle was like stepping into another world. The stalks were monstrous, towering over me like skyscrapers, their tassels brushing the sky. All around, the earth was unusually soft and moist, with sprouts pushing out from the ground in unnaturally squares. In the middle of the circle, my foot hit something hard. I stooped, tracing the shape of an artifact buried shallowly, smoothly metallic, with unknown symbols etched on it. Over the following weeks, anomalies intensified. Late at night, our farmhouse shook with an abrasive metallic hum that seemed to rise from the very depths of the earth. The once comforting, familiar rustling of the corn grew more cacophonous, and the animals grew nervous and distraught, refusing to eat or sleep. Even our dog, a stubbornly fearless Rottweiler named Guinness, growled menacingly at the impish glow that began to emerge from the cornfield each night. The climax of the terror began on a chilling night in late July. I found the courage to investigate once again, drawn by the phosphorescent glow and bone-vibrating hum. When I reached the circle, I struggled to comprehend the spectacle unfolding before me. There, hovering above the circle, was a massive, pulsing orb of light, an ominous lighthouse in our sea of corn. The bare, twisted figures extending from it descended into the swaying stalks, their ghostly, elongated arms moving rhythmically in the green flux. As I stood there, petrified at the edge of the circle, figures appeared, shrouded entities, neither wholly human nor entirely alien, with a ghastly pallor that mirrored the spectral glow. They swirled around the corn circle in a haunting dance, their trance-like movements creating a mesmerizing yet horrifying tableau. The scene was otherworldly, a confluence of terror and beauty that no mortal eye was meant to witness. Suddenly, they froze, and I felt unseen eyes directing an intense gaze towards my hiding spot behind the gnarled stalks. A loud, deafening screech filled the humidity-charged air. The screech turned into a repetitive chant, an eerie, unspeakable language that sent chills down my spine, growing louder and faster until it became insufferable. Then, abruptly, there was silence. The hum ceased, the glow dulled, and the figures vanished. I was left standing alone in the hauntingly silent cornfield, the phantom glow fading from the night sky. I could only stare, heart pounding, at the now overly familiar etched artifact shrouded by the back-to-normal cornstalks. In the aftermath, the artifact was gone, and our cornfield became a shadow of its former self, with charred stalks and crushed earth. Despite widespread rumors and multiple investigations, no one could determine the cause of this terrifying experience. Some suggested a religious phenomenon, others posited military tests, while skeptics insisted on mass hallucination or pranksters. Whatever the cause, Those of us who witnessed these horrors knew the bleaker truth, an encounter with horrifying, spectral beings and their otherworldly artifact. To this day, the memory's imprint remains, indelibly etched into my soul. The field carries the haunting aura of those horrific summer nights, a silent testament to the unspeakable transgressions of normalcy. And so, I share this story, this confession of the unimaginably horrifying experience of a once comforting cornfield, as a chilling reminder of the unknown perils that lurk beyond our comprehension. We cannot fully unveil the many secrets Mother Nature guards, and some secrets reveal themselves in the most terrifying way possible that leave a lasting mark of horror.